This Crev's corner, the ball is in your court. Swish.
Welcome to episode 7 of Crev's Corner. Here today, I have a very special guest for me. I've been watching his production videos since I was 16, 15 years old. So I'm just going to give it to Jon Kilmer, and he's going to introduce himself.
What's up, everybody? What was the name of the podcast? Krebs Corner?
Yeah, Crev's Corner, Crevs, and then Corner.
Krebs Corner. Fucking psyched to be episode 7. Wow, you're just starting out. I love it. Thanks for considering me as a guest. On my better days, people call me Jon Kilmer, the filmer, because I'm the videographer for the artist Mike, formerly known as Mike Stud, among many other things. And I'm a Steve, as you know.
Yeah, so Jon, I was going to say, I'm going to talk about first how I got to be a Steve and how I got to find a Mike Stud. So one day I was just looking through YouTube and I saw some guy who looked like an athlete sitting on a bar stool in a red room and a guy behind him playing a guitar, and they were passing baseballs around with sayings on them. And
I remember that, yeah.
This guy was just freestyling it about 7 years ago. So I would have been 14 years old. I would have been entering my freshman year of high school. And it's Break It Down. That was my first video that I ever saw, was Break It Down. And then we just kind of, as our whole friend group, we kind of just jumped on the wave. Tell me about how you guys got into the small videos like that, the Break It Down, the cover videos of Hold On Going Home and Glad You Came and stuff like that. How did that originate?
Yeah, so I mean, just to give a little context, this was probably 2014-ish. Yeah, around 2014, I'd have to say. And we started a series called Sunday Stud Day, where we did like remixes and freestyles every week, I believe, and released it on YouTube. And this was a time, I don't think the term like YouTuber was really a thing back then. Like I don't really think people were vlogging a ton back then compared to now, anyways. And we were just finding out ways to one, connect with our audience, but two, expand our audience. And that was just, as Mike was probably doing music for like 2-3 years at that point. Just doing weekly releases on YouTube was just like a great way to expand our audience by doing remixes. I mean, like you just said yourself, like you saw that and you became a fan. That was the whole purpose of it. And this was a time when I was living in New York City. I had an apartment in Manhattan and a recording studio in Manhattan, and Mike would take the train from Rhode Island every weekend, and we'd make those videos and put them out to the fans. And that was something that really expanded our fan base. It really helped with touring and helped with let people like get to know who we are, who Mike is. So Sunday Stud Days, man, that was a big part of our career.
Yeah, now you talked about how the streets in New York, it seemed like you shot a couple of music videos on New York, your own music video, The Weekend, and then Bounce.
Not yet.
So how, I was gonna say, I don't know if you had talked about that much, but how did you become, I mean, you were putting out your own rap music video 6 years ago. I don't know how serious you took it, but how did you transition from being a rapper to wanting to be a producer full time then?
I'll bring a little context to this. So those videos that you just mentioned, that was like me just shooting the shit, having fun. Because I'm a funny guy. I keep it light, and like I've been making music. That's how I got into music. Was I started making music, and that wasn't when I started making music. I started when I was 17, 18 years old. That's kind of how I fell in love with producing and engineering and the creative side of things. And if it wasn't for that, I probably wouldn't start producing artists, and I probably wouldn't be here today. So um it's funny, when I was like probably a senior in high school up until a sophomore in college, I wasn't working with artists. I was just getting like recording equipment so I could fuck around and make music myself. And I think there's like an important lesson in that. It's you should fall in love with something before you get ahead of yourself and map out your whole career, because you don't know what it's going to lead to. If I didn't I didn't start making music because I thought I was going to be the biggest artist in the world. I just loved making music. And then that in turn made me a great producer, and made me a great engineer. And then it made me very valuable to musicians. And that's, when I met people like Mike, I became very valuable to them. And then that's how I kind of got my foot in the door. So Definitely an important lesson there.
Yeah, you talked about how kind of like falling in love with a trait or an act and then kind of riding that wave. That's kind of, you guys helped me. I've been a fan of your guys' podcast and kind of taking life advice as just one liners here and there. And I've separated and made a career decision just based off of stuff like that, little one liners of falling in love with something before you go and step your foot in the door
Hmm.
with doing it. All right, so
Exactly.
staying on the topic of back in the day, blast from the past. Another one of Mike
Hmm.
Stud's videos that I saw that was like kind of eye opener to me was the Hoodie Allen beef. So can you put a little context
Yeah.
into that? Even Steven. Even
Yeah. I mean,
Steven was one of my favorites back then.
yeah. I mean, it was a great record. To be completely honest, it's not even something that we even think about anymore because it was such a long time ago. It's not even on our radar anymore. But at the time, I mean, it was. We just flat out didn't like the guy. You know, like
I was gonna say no. This is
having
back.
having.
I was gonna say this is back when I was 15 years old. Now you guys are on way bigger, better things.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't given the guy an ounce of thought since since then. But at the time, I mean, I can't quite remember how it started. I think like Hoodie Allen made a song that took a few stabs at other white rappers like Jeezy and Mike, and you look now, it's like no one even knows who the fuck Hoodie Allen is, and Jeezy is
Yeah.
one of the biggest artists in the world, and Mike's killing it. So like, I don't know. At the time though, it was funny, and like that song was insane. Like the Even Stevens song, like that was that went on to be like a very popular.
I was gonna say, all right, going to date now. Your guys' last tour was for the homies.
I thought was
Oh, my bad. One of your last tours was the For the Homies tour back in 2019. I went to a show, House of Blues in Cleveland on 420. You were not there.
ah
You were at, I think, and Mike called you out in the middle of the stage and said, Kilmer, you should be here because you had to stay with your family for Easter. But no, that was my last.
uh-huh.
When you guys are
Mhm.
thinking about going touring, we got this global pandemic, but when do you guys think of tours coming up?
You see news from like Texas and Mississippi, from the past couple of days that they're opening up completely. I'm sure a lot of states are going to. I don't think anytime the next. I would say at the absolute earliest it would be the end of this year, definitely 2022, which is going to be exciting because like as you just mentioned, I mean we haven't really toured since you know 2 years ago. It's been like 2 years since we toured, so we're all really antsy to get on the road, but we don't want to compromise it by doing it half-assed. When the country's not totally open, backed up. So we're when we get the green light and we can like do it the way we normally do it, fucking full throttle, we're gonna do it.
All right, staying on some more recent stuff, and we kind of mentioned "You Never Know, You Know What I Mean" podcast. You guys toured, or you guys debuted your first episode July 2nd of 2019. Now 73 episodes in. Are you guys happy where that has came from to where you guys have it now? Are you looking for some big moves in the near future?
Yeah, we're all in on the podcast game. I mean, it's been such an incredible device for us to one, just connect with our fans and our audience, and two, just really get ourselves out there as far as giving us an identity and letting people know who we are. Like I feel like it's a great way to connect with an audience because they're sitting there listening to you talk for over an hour every week. And I don't know how familiar you are with our vlog we did back in the day called Touring's Boring, which was like a
I,
little web series. Yeah, I'm sure we'll get to that. But when we did that back in the day, that was a way for us to put videos out and vlogs out so people could see who we are. But now that we've gotten older, we're all 30-ish, and I think podcasting is an incredible device to just sit down and talk and get your ideas out there and your ideologies out there, and you can just really let people know the type of person you are. And I think that's what makes them fall in love with you.
I was gonna say I think one of the very good things that you guys do with your podcast is you get a lot of people from different crowds. You got Mod Son, who's a big music guy, kind of gets that alternative group. Larry, the late great Larry King. You have Stroman, Hunter Green, Jared Goff, Trevor Bauer. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you guys, how do you guys kind of get the full circle? What was the idea? You got Squints on from Sandlot. So, what was your guys' idea of getting the full circle, kind of getting everyone involved?
Well, it all boils down to Mike's just a popular guy, you know. Mike's a popular guy, especially in the athletic community. You know, it's incredible to see, you know, fans that were once coming to his shows went on to do. Um, sorry about that. Fans that were, you know, once going to his shows went on to do incredible things in the sports world, like Jared Goff, for example. Like he came to our show in Oakland when we had 80 people at the show. We didn't know who the hell he was. We just knew he was, you know, a college quarterback. And then he went on to obviously become first pick in the draft. And now he's just a total fucking rock star. So like, it's crazy to see stuff like that. But, you know, over the years, a lot of people like that have gravitated towards Mike and his music and his message. And that's really all it is. Like anyone we've had on the show, it's just someone we've connected with in one way or another. And they just wanted to do it. So that's you're really just seeing like our network firsthand.
I was gonna say you talked about on Jared Goff's podcast that you guys just went to, or Jared Goff went to a show, like you said, about 80 people there, and then you guys went back to his house and party. Did you guys do that at every party when you was back in the day?
Yeah, back in the day, I mean, when the shows are that small, that was a particularly small show. But when the shows were like in some shitty bar and 200, 300, 400 people showed up, like, yeah, oh yeah, we'd go to the local dive bar, we'd go to house parties, we'd go to fraternity parties. We would just roll up and have the time of our lives, you know, because it was a controlled environment enough where we could, you know, we could have a good time. Since then, you know, we haven't done too much of that, but
I was gonna say since you guys have got a
I
little
always
bigger.
find myself in those. Yeah.
So who are
Yeah,
your
exactly,
personal
exactly.
who are your personal favorite guests that have got on the You Never Know podcast?
Um, yeah, that's a good question. I mean, obviously Larry King, rest in peace. I mean, he's just such a legend. Um, if anyone, you know, if any young people aren't familiar with Larry King, I strongly urge you to, you know, give him Google or YouTube. He's one of the most famous interviewers of all time. He's interviewed over 50,000 people, I believe. Um, just a radio and television icon. So having him come to the show was like, it was an out of body experience, you know, like it's one of those moments where, you know, I look at all the work we put in and it's like, man, like all the shit was worth it, you know, because we've gotten here and we're doing these really special interviews with really amazing people. So that was a great experience.
All right, now I'm gonna rattle off a couple list of names and just give me a couple sentences on how it is hanging out with them.
Okay.
Johnny Manziel,
Mayhem.
man, the dude crazy.
Fucking mayhem. QB of the Zapper is just a stand-up guy. I mean, we were hanging out with him yesterday. I think he's expected to. We're in Arizona right now. I think he's expected over here any moment. The guy's just all class, just fucking mayhem. Loves to have a good time. Just an overall great person.
All right, how's Blue Yip? Because we've seen him a couple times, but he isn't very vocal like you are.
Blue Yep is can I spin the camera around? Yeah, Blue Yep's right here. He's getting a little sun over there right now. Blue's getting a little sun by the pool right now. Man, I can't fit him in one sentence. It's impossible. He's an anomaly of a human being. There's no one else like him. When he's not around, it feels like a part of you is missing. That's what it's like. That's what it's like having him as a friend.
All right, how is Mod's son? Because Mod's son is one guy who you guys introduced me to him in my personal life, just watching the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
One of my buddies actually texted me. He's like, "Hey, have you seen Mike's new podcast?" I'm like, "No." He's like, "It's got Mod's son in it." And after I watched his podcast, and then I was struck. Like it was an out of body experience. I was like, "No way, I cannot." So I went search up his music. I talked to you about his new song "Flames." So like, how is Mod's son in real life?
He is one of the most caring, loving human beings on the planet. He's the type of guy where, you know, over the years, like there's been other musicians and celebrities and people that, you know, we run into once in a while. Not like, you know, like someone like Mod Son, like he's our friend, but we don't see him a whole hell of a lot. Probably just like little moments over time.
Mm-hmm.
But when you do see him, he genuinely treats you like a friend.
Yeah.
He genuinely treats you like a friend. And that's just the type of person he is. And I think that says a lot about him. And he's just genuinely a fucking sweet guy.
Now, there is a viral video out that Drake approaches the table that Mike was at. Were you at that same table?
I was, yeah. That was 2016 when
I
we
was
were
gonna say I
touring.
couldn't check a year on it. I found the video, but I couldn't check a year. How is that? Like, how is Drake, who in 2016 he came out with the One Dance album, and that took off like no other. He was probably at the prime. I mean, I still think he's in his prime, but how is that him walking up to you guys and kind of admiring Mike's music?
I mean, that's the ultimate compliment, especially you look at the guys that Mike looks up to. It's people like Drake and Lil Wayne and artists like that. To have one of them like walk up to you and say like, "Hey, I fuck with your music." I mean, that's as good as it gets. That's as good as it gets.
Yeah.
We were, I mean, at that time, I believe Drake's cousin was Ryan was on our tour at the time. He was touring with us. He's a good friend of ours, and I'm sure that's how he got linked to our music and Mike's music. So, yeah, man. I mean, that's incredible. Like having your people you look up to come up to you like that and show you the mutual respect. It's really dope.
I was say, all right. So I got two more. Travis Kelsey from the Chiefs.
I personally haven't hung out with him a ton, so I can't really comment on that. Mike's hung out with him a whole hell of a lot more than I have, but from the short glimpses I had, I mean, the guy's a rock star. He's it's he's a very flashy guy, and I mean that in the best way possible. He walks into a room and he's such a fucking big ass dude. You just kind of feel the energy. So definitely a really cool dude. That was a great interview.
I would say I like that interview. And then the last one is probably a guy you've hung out with, Post Malone.
He's very similar to Mudstone in a way, where just man, such a fucking genuinely nice guy. It's he's a guy where over the years, like you know, at all different parts of his career, he was just one of the homies coming over playing beer pong in your house, and you forget that he's like probably the biggest artist in the world, or at least one of them. Uh,
Oh yeah, you're totally
just
right.
really down to earth. You know,
You're totally
he,
right.
he
What
just
you
I mean,
talk
like
about.
it all boils down to him. Just he just loves hanging with the homies, playing beer pong, smoking ciggies, and like just having a good time. And I think that's why we were attracted to each other. Because I mean, you know, when you're in LA, you're not around a whole lot of people like that in the entertainment industry. Like everyone's so flashy and so ego driven. No one just wants to fucking hang out and drink beer and listen to music and smoke cigarettes and play beer pong. You know what I mean? So like, I think that's why we were originally attracted to each other. And he's just a great guy.
Yeah, yeah. I was gonna say, Post seems like a dude who's down to hang out and have a couple brews. Where
Hmm.
did the Bellina Cup idea come from? Because you saw that took the nation by storm, took Twitter by storm. A lot of guys, my friend group, had their own similar little Bellina Cup tournament. So how did that all originate from?
Hmm.
And you got some big stars in there.
Yeah, so that it's crazy to think that was about a year ago. And just to give context to the listeners who don't know, the Bellini Cup was right when quarantine hit. It was a virtual beer pong celebrity tournament, and we had people in the tournament like Machine Gun Kelly, the Nelk Boys, Morgan Wallen, Travis Kelsey. I mean, you name it. We had so many big people in the tournament. It was all for charity. We raised a lot of money for charity. Um, and the Bellini Cup, like the name started when Mike and Post were on a bender one night. They're partying until about 7 a.m. They probably played like 50 games of beer pong through the night, and then the next morning they decided to go to a trophy store and create a trophy for the greatest beer pong players in the world, which they consider themselves the best beer pong players in the world. And they called the trophy the Bellini Cup. And they went to a trophy store at like 7 in the morning and made we still have it today. It's like a 5 foot tall trophy called the Bellini Cup. They had wrestling belts made, the Bellini Cup wrestling belts. And that's how that was born. And then we turned it into the celebrity tournament for charity. And then now currently we're running with it, and we're still holding Bellini Cup tournaments for just the general public as like a high stakes beer pong tournament that we put on every couple of months. and you can win like a ton of money just entering in that tournament and playing beer pong virtually, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah. So I'm gonna ask the original, like with where these items originated from. Where did you guys get the idea of the chug bud?
The Chug Bud was originally created from a fan, actually, one of our fans. He originally contacted Mike to just be an ambassador of the brand, sorry, and he sent us a couple prototypes. The company was not yet very big. He sent us some prototypes, and they kind of sat in our house for a while until we started giving them like some real attention and used them. And we realized it was just lights out idea. Easily the best way to chug a beer. I mean, I got one right here. Got one right here. we go city to city. We can't go anywhere without these things. It's just a revolutionary way to chug a beer. I mean, you look at ways to chug a beer. There's beer bongs and there's shotgunning beers. This is the most convenient, cleanest, fastest way to chug a beer. So it all started with just one of our fans reaching out to Mike, and then we realized how great of a product it was, and then slowly Mike became more and more involved in the company, and today Mike's a majority owner of the brand, and he it's a big part of his business.
Now, where did the Steve tagline come from? Calling everyone Steve.
Honestly, we don't know. We look at videos from the past. It was something we've done for like 7 years. We don't know where it started. We don't know how it started. I think it's something that just kind of the universe just kind of like put in our lives without us even knowing it, and it slowly became more and more of a thing where we started calling each other Steve, and then started calling our fans Steve, and then we're calling everyone Steve. So like I mean, I don't really have a straight up answer for that.
Now, where did the slogan "You Never Know"? Where did that come from? Was that Mike's thing?
I think Blue came up with that.
Oh, really?
I think that's something Blue said like for like years. Yeah.
That actually doesn't shock me. That's something
I think it's just I think it's just something he said a lot when he was fucked up, and then it became like a huge tagline for us. We just adopted it into like more and more stuff.
I was gonna say, now where did you meet Mike to originate this whole friendship going back in the day? Where did you meet Mike?
So talking back to New York City, when we were in the early days, I was still living in New York. I was maybe like a year out of college. I was working for myself. I was just kind of grinding in New York, waking up every day, recording musicians for like $20 an hour and selling beats and stuff like that. Just kind of barely getting by, just starting out, just young, released into the real world. And I remember like every day I would go through music blogs. You're probably too young to know this, but there was before Spotify and Apple, there were music blogs. There were no playlists. There were just music blogs that you would go to get like the newest, coolest music. And Mike's song College Humor was on there on a blog that I, was on pretty often. And if you've seen the College Humor music video, it's a lot of partying, and it's like the girls and the drinking and kind of the whole college life scene. And I saw the video and I'm like, all right, like I feel like I would align with this guy. I read up on his story and how he was an ex-athlete and a pitcher at Duke, and I was very intrigued. So he was one of the people I reached out to, and I sent him some beats and some instrumentals, and we end up connecting that way. He liked some of the instrumentals, and he ended up making a song on one of them. And then shortly after that, we started shooting music videos, and then he started getting booked for concerts, and I started shooting his concerts, and it just kind of went from there. The rest was history.
Yeah, it took off. So I was gonna say, you went on record for saying that "Boys of Summer" is your favorite song. Is that true?
Yeah, man. I mean, come on. I mean, I'm a guy with certain needs and aspirations. And when you're at a concert and a song comes on and girls just physically take their clothes off, how can you not like that song?
I was gonna say, that's how it took me by storm. I was like, all right, let's see if this is the real deal. That's all the concerts, and "Boys of Summer" came on, and everyone just lost their mind. I was gonna say, so where is your?
It's just.
Oh no, go ahead.
No, I'm done. What were you gonna say?
I'll say, where is your end goal in all this? Being a producer, where do you see your mark? Do you just want to hitch on to Mike and see where this thing takes you guys?
No, I mean, what's great about him is he's so ambitious and he's always looking to diversify as a just as like a entrepreneur. I mean, the guy has just got so much going on. I mean, as far as merchandising and chug buds and podcasting and music, I mean, he never stops. So I've been lucky enough to be a part of that. And when we started a podcast, I got to become a podcast producer. Um, and now like Johnny Manziel is starting a podcast and I get to produce that podcast. I mean, that now all of a sudden I'm like a huge podcast producer, so like stuff like that is just like really fascinating to me. And but to answer your question, I think my biggest fault and my biggest, like, I don't know, probably the best thing about me and the worst thing about me is that I'm just so ambitious. I have so many creative interests. I love producing and creating, and that lies in music and podcasting and films and movies, and I just want to do it all, and it's a lot to take on. But to answer your question, um, I want to continue to produce music, film, and podcasts. That's just what I love doing. Some of them, I'm further along in some of them than others, but it's just something I'm probably going to do the rest of my life.
I want to say thank you, John, for joining. Just one thing before we head off, for you guys who don't know, this is Krev's Corner, episode 7, with John Kilmer, Mike Stud's producer. You were just talking about earlier how you were in an apartment in New York City, kind of making beats to get by. Now you're hanging out, producing podcasts for Johnny Manziel, one of the biggest faces in the America at the time, hanging out with Post Malone, some of the biggest names. So what would you tell a kid who is wanting to achieve his dream, but doesn't have the confidence or doesn't have, where would you tell him? Because at one point you were barely making it in an apartment and now you're living the high life right now, man.
Yeah, man. I mean, there's so much advice I could give. I mean, that could be an entire podcast. I would say it's a mixture of a couple things. It's believing in yourself and having the confidence to one, have the self-awareness to know what you want to do, and that's something I'm so grateful for, because some people don't even know what they want to do. Like, it's not that they're scared to pursue something, they just don't even know what to pursue. And I think that's okay. If you're young and you're 22 or 20 or whatever and you don't know what you want to do, that's fine. That's totally fine. And as long as you're trying new things and you're putting yourself out there and you're just trying to figure out what that passion is. But if you do have a passion, and I would just say never compromise it. Life's too fucking short to take a job for financial security. I think it's best to just do what you love and surround yourself with like-minded people, which is another big thing. Like, there's a famous saying that show me your 5 closest friends and I'll show you your future. So like, if you're hanging out with people who aren't necessarily the best influence for you, you're probably not going to go too far in life. But if you're hanging out with like-minded, ambitious people who want to succeed and work really hard and have a lot of passion and positivity in their life, then you're probably going to end up okay. So that's the advice I would give.
All right, thank you, John. I was gonna say thank you, John, for taking your time out to jump on my show. It was a blast, man. You are one of the guys who I've looked up since I was like 15, and when I just started this podcast, I was say when I started this podcast, I text my friends. I'm like, dude, I was like, I'm just gonna DM Kilmer. I'm like, if he responds, he doesn't, he does it. I was like, so thank you so much for doing this, man. I would say that wraps up.
Thanks for having me.
I would say, yeah, thank you so much. I would say that's for episode 7 with John Kilmer. Thank you guys for tuning in, and goodbye.